I am Congressman Ted Lieu from California.
Hi everyone, Assemblymember Evan Lowe here in the district office of the Ted Lieu, Congressmember representing the 33rd Congressional District, representing portions of Los Angeles, Santa Monica, and also Beverly Hills, a number of other cities as well. Congressman, thank you very much for having me in your district office.
Thank you, Evan. Honored you came down here.
Well, it's a pleasure. This is a series of conversations of notable Californians, and certainly you have led with distinction representing us, and I can't tell you how proud I personally am to see a fellow Asian American face on television, on the national stage, representing our values very eloquently. So first off, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I've learned to talk in 45 seconds or less.
So we'll try to see how good you are here. But along those lines, this doesn't just come naturally to many individuals, whether or not naturally of the culture of Asian Pacific Islanders. But where did you get that start, certainly coming from the state legislature in California?
So I think it has to do with how I came here. Like many Americans or their parents or grandparents, I am an immigrant. And when my parents looked at a map of America, they said we're going to Cleveland. So that's where I grew up. And we started off poor. They did not speak English well, and they went to flea markets to sell gifts to make ends meet. Over many years, they were able to open up one gift store in a shopping mall, and my brother and I would help watch that store because they didn't have to pay us. And then eventually they expanded over 6 stores. And so in my mind, they achieved the American dream. They went from being poor to a home, gave my brother and I an amazing education. My brother's a doctor now, and my parents still remind me of that. But it's one reason I joined the Air Force on active duty, one reason I choose to remain in the reserves, and one reason I'm in politics, because I believe America is an exceptional country, and stories like mine get replicated across a nation every generation.
Sure. So do your parents understand quite the level of extent, that influence that you have in the United States government?
So I think they like seeing what I'm doing, although I did get a call from my mom last term, and when something like this, she said, are you sure it's okay, those things you say about the president? She was sort of worried about my safety, and
Sure.
My view is, we're in a democracy. I trust our democracy to function.
Sure. I think that's very inspiring to see that not all Asian Americans act the same, but that we can very much focus on the work that we have ahead of us in a very deliberative manner as well too. But that goes back then to kind of the roots and the history that you've had also in the California State Legislature. It's well known that back in 2012, you were the author to ban conversion therapy for minors 18 and under. Since 2012, 17 plus states have also followed in suit, California leading the way. But that wasn't easy back in 2012, and people, I think, get complacent about where the movement has gone. But do you see any path for success in building off of that at the federal level?
I do. So first of all, thank you for your leadership on this issue and continuing to push it and advance it. At the federal level, I have legislation that would ban this horrific practice nationwide. And it's called the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act, and we're going to introduce it later this year. If you look at all the research as you have done, it's very clear that not only is this practice a waste of money for people who spend money on it, but it can also harm some of the patients who have gone through it, leading some to do harm to themselves or to go as far as committing suicide.
Right. And so what happens, though, in the conversation? We're in California, and we like to think of ourselves as a representative democracy and embracing diversity, being inclusive, not exclusive. But what's that conversation like with that other fellow Congress member who might be from a very conservative community?
So the exciting thing about the fact that 17 other states have copied California's law is that a number of those were governors who happen to be Republican. And a number of those, you had state legislatures where you had Republican state legislators who voted for it. So this, to me, is not a partisan issue. It's an issue about consumer protection, about stopping fraud, and about making sure we don't harm people who go through a fake therapy. And in Congress, my view is, everything seems impossible until it happens in politics. So you never know when public opinion shifts in such a way that the people demand action and something happens.
Sure. So you're hopeful for the future and seeing other congressional members also supporting this, and hopefully love will transcend partisanship.
Yes, so even if you look at just the last few years, the debate has shifted where most Republicans don't actually defend this practice anymore.
Well, that's great. Well, back in 2012, it wasn't easy to be a champion for the LGBT community, so that's very well known. So thank you again for your leadership in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Now, so what are you working on with respect to the district here in Los Angeles and in California? I know that there's a homelessness issue and that you've been able to partner with our hometown senator as well.
Yes, so homelessness is a big issue, not just in Los Angeles, but across the state. As you know, there was a spike of over 30% increase in homelessness in California statewide. Those are shocking numbers. And at the federal level, we do have programs that help veterans who are homeless. It's known as HUD-VASH vouchers. And the reason it's called a HUD-VASH voucher is it provides housing through HUD, and then the VASH part is services to these veterans to make sure that we can get them out of homelessness as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the federal government doesn't really have a program for homeless people who are not veterans. So Senator Feinstein and I have introduced legislation that's going to provide $750 million in grants to cities and counties in the state who do have homeless wraparound services to get them hopefully out of homelessness. So hopefully we can get that through. We'll see what happens.
Well, this doesn't seem like a partisan issue whatsoever. What's your sense of how it will be shepherded moving through?
So it's not a partisan issue in the sense that you do have both Republicans and Democrats focused on the homelessness issue, but in Congress, most Republicans will not support spending bills.
Sure.
And so that's what we're trying to deal with, and that continues to be a challenge.
Sure. So how do you make of the notion that, for example, in the state legislature in California, there is a supermajority, whereas in the congressional level, the level of support, it can be a little bit more difficult. How do you, coming from California, coming from the state legislature, grapple with that, find meaning every single day when you go and fight for all of us in California to D.C.?
So the House of Representatives so it's clearly in Democrat control. The margin is not great, but we've been remarkably unified. So if you look at all the major pieces of legislation that have passed the House floor, they have had overwhelming Democratic support. So the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization, the Equality Act, you have two bills on gun safety. You have a number of measures that pass the federal legislature in Congress with overwhelming Democratic support, very unified. And recently we passed $15 an hour minimum wage increase as well.
Okay. So there's still substantive things getting done, even though the numbers not necessarily be there with respect to what you might see in state legislature.
So coming out of the House of Representatives, a lot of this legislation is now stuck at the U.S. Senate, which is controlled by Republicans. And so Mitch McConnell has essentially single-handedly stopped the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization. He has stopped election security bills. He has stopped the Equality Act. By the way, his stoppage of the election security bills did lead to the hashtag Moscow Mitch, which clearly seems to bother him. And my view is if it bothers him, he should just put up these bills for a vote.
Sure, right. I think so much of the social media helps keep individuals and residents interconnected about what's going on, but a fair amount of our electorate also gets turned off by it. What type of message would you say to those that are saying, I just don't like so much conflict, I don't like what I see on TV, and yet we know that, in fact, they should be doing the opposite by being engaged, marching on the streets, voting, getting involved. What would you say to that apathetic resident?
Well, the way media works is they generally deal with conflict. So you don't see stories about planes that land. And that's just the way the media is. And we can't really change it. Most of them are for-profit companies. Conflict is what basically sells newspaper ads, sells TV ads. And so my view is, well, if we can't change it, we just have to learn to deal with what the system is and then try to get our message out through that system.
Oh, great. Well, as we finalize the conversation here, just two final questions. But what keeps you motivated and driven going on that plane every single week and fighting for all of us in D.C.?
So as I said earlier, everything in politics seems impossible until it happens. So if 10 years ago I would say, hey, in 10 years we're going to have gay marriage in all 50 states and a number of them will be smoking weed, you think I was crazy. That's what's happening right now.
Sure.
And so you just keep pushing and you keep fighting on issues. the reason I ran for Congress, or one of the main reasons, is of climate change. I was a co-author of AB 32 in the state legislature, and the first bill I introduced in Congress, and I've introduced every term, basically takes California's climate change law and makes it national. And at some point, I think we will get climate change bills enacted, and you have to keep pushing. So that's why I do what I do.
Just keep fighting. You got the fire in the belly. Well, it's well known that you've been a great ally for so many of the other communities that you don't necessarily identify from, but yet you represent all communities. So thank you very much for that. Final question, though. Yeah. For those individuals then, that young individual who sees you on TV and says, right, boy, that Congressmember Lieu is fighting for us. I never thought that I could get in that role. Right. What piece of one advice?
Sure, yeah. So thank you for that question. As far as I can tell, you only live once. And so my advice is whatever dream a person has, whether it's to be a violin player or a doctor or a lawyer or an elected official, whatever it is that person wants to do, they should try to do it in this lifetime, because there's no other lifetime in which you do it. And if you don't pursue that dream, I don't see how you can ever do it any other time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ted. Yeah.
Thank
you. You ever heard it from him himself, the Ted Lieu, Congressmember from the 33rd Congressional District. Thanks so very much, Ted.
Thank you, Evan.